Hello, everyone. My name's Stuart Easton. I'm CEO of Transparent Choice and one of the founders over here. And with me today, I have my good friend, Amanda Oakenfold, talking to us from Australia. These sessions are always great because one of us is always searching for caffeine to get going in the morning, and the other is searching for a wine glass to wind down at the end of the day. So today, Amanda's got the wine glass, I've got the caffeine. I just got back from a trip to Scotland, beautiful Scotland, where all the lambs are out, and it's absolutely gorgeous.
Oh,
so
really?
this is my caffeine delivery vehicle today in celebration of the lambs being out.
As we march into winter.
As you march into winter, indeed, indeed. And Amanda, well, actually, do you know what? I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Amanda, because you know, all your awesomeness is too much for me at this time of day.
and I haven't started the wine yet, so hopefully we can get through this, although I am eyeing off the wine glass. Amanda Oakenfold, I'm in IBM and lead the complex program management practice within IBM for Australia and New Zealand, and otherwise been hanging around doing project management stuff for now over 25 years, since it sort of started to really form as an industry and upon itself. So I'm quite passionate about delivery industry being something that is its own identity as well, because what we do, I think, is so different from other aspects of the business. We're sort of the mortar between the bricks. We hold it all together, and we should be proud of what we do and what we deliver and make a profession out of it.
Well said, well said. And now one of the things that always stuck with me from our first ever webinar together or podcast together, Amanda, was you know, you had a good go at, you know, the way that people run projects, the tools. You got to know your tools, use the right tools in the right place. And you know, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about spreadsheets in, you know, it was in the context of project prioritization, because that's what we do, and that triggered a whole just, you know, enormous rant from Amanda, and I thought that's just too good to waste. So that's what we're here to do today. We're here to
rant.
Well, yeah, we're here just to poke the beast and see if we can trigger another Amanda rant about spreadsheets. And it's about, you know, the right tool for the right job. And, you know, the timing is great because we're actually in the middle of a deployment of our prioritization software with a big Canadian insurance company. And we're replacing one of the big 4 or 5, I don't know how many of them there are these days, consulting companies that had been doing prioritization using a spreadsheet, and it just didn't work. They just, you know, and if you go and read the textbooks, there isn't a textbook, but there are lots of research papers on how to do it wrong, what goes wrong with prioritizing projects in spreadsheets. They did everything. But if you hit the web, everything they did is out there and is promoted as best practice by certain practitioners, right? So there's a lot of people out there who will say, just grab a spreadsheet, no matter what it is you're doing. They'll just say, go grab a spreadsheet, and you know, you can do this yourself and you can do that yourself. And you know what? Maybe if you're in a 3-man company, maybe that's good enough. But if you're in an organization of any size, I hate to break it to you, it doesn't work. So Amanda was just telling me a minute ago about spreadsheets and scheduling and how good that is.
I have got to say one thing that's just going to make it. All I can think of is, would you hire a builder to build your house if he cannot use a hammer or any of his tool set? You know, or even worse, if he decides that he's going to try and, instead of using a hammer to hit the nail with, he'll just make something up in his back shed and kind of work it through, and she'll be right.
Right.
You wouldn't pay top dollar. You wouldn't pay top dollar for that. So why are you doing it? Can you be promised that if you get that builder and he uses the curious little tool that he's made up in his back shed, that your house is going to stand up. It's going to withstand, the weather. It's going to keep everything out that you want it to. If you're that confident, go and use your spreadsheets, because that's pretty much the same analogy. And I had a funny conversation inside. It was inside with a colleague actually, who wanted to leverage a Excel spreadsheet to do some advisory work. And I suppose I hit him pretty hard. I just said, are you prepared to be sued? Are you happy? Do you have enough confidence in your Excel spreadsheet that when you reprioritize a company's portfolio, and let's say you set it up whereby they lose market share, they lose money, are you willing to stand by your tool and your science that backs that tool to be confident enough, to answer any questions that the shareholders or the public have got? And he just went white. And I said, well, then don't offer it, because it's unethical. It's absolutely unethical to do that, because inside if you swing up your spreadsheet, as nice as it is, it's going to include every bit of human bias that you're going to have. You're not infallible when there is human error, and it drives me completely nuts that we have in our market really amazing tools that we can use, the proper hammers and really good saws and some fantastic Ubutus, latest tool set, and we decide to put it aside and make up our own. It drives me nuts that we do that.
So give you a great example. Year and a half ago, something like that, middle of the COVID pandemic, government is reporting case rates every day, and then suddenly they went, oops, we lost 250,000 because we didn't realize that our spreadsheet had run out of rows.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, this was really big. So they had to go back and kind of rebuild everything. And so they just, they grabbed a spreadsheet because it was easy, and they were using it to track all the numbers. And, it just was the wrong tool.
And I get it when you're just starting off and you've got to have something quick and you're responding quickly, but know at what point you have to translate that into something a little bit more mature.
So in our domain, that's, so around project prioritization, we see this a lot. And there's a lot of people that will just go out and build a spreadsheet to score projects, right? And so there are lots of ways that can go wrong, right? And I could list them, but instead of listing all the technical things that could go wrong, let me tell you what happens when it goes wrong. Yes. So there was a PMO leader who spent 6 months building his magic spreadsheet, scoring projects for a big energy company, and then he had the big presentation where he presented it to the executive leadership team, and the leadership team sort of looked at it, because he'd made all these errors. He'd done his research, he'd been online, he'd found people that said do this, and they were all wrong. So he built a spreadsheet, and the leadership looked at the scoring, right, the ranking of the projects, and they went, well, that's wrong. That's a really important project. That's at the bottom of the list. And what's that up at the top? That's nonsense. That makes no sense whatsoever. And the guy turned around and said, well, the numbers don't lie, and was fired.
Ooh.
Right. So that's the point. He actually lost his job because he believed the numbers in his spreadsheet. Right? He believed that if you go out and just put numbers on something, then those numbers must be right. And one of the problems with the spreadsheet is that it gives this impression of correctness, of science, of validity.
That's a 5. Maybe I might put a 4 on this side.
There you go. There you go.
Correct.
Yeah, we put numbers on it. It must be right. And this poor guy lost his job, right? Because he went in and just used the wrong tool for the job. And now you've seen some pretty big disasters. I think you were talking.
I want everyone to do me out of a job.
Yeah.
because my specialty has become, over the last few years in particular, going in and recovering programs and
Right.
recovering portfolios. And I turn up, I mean, everyone knows the story, it's a particular utilities company that had water, a project where they were funding jet skis, automated jet skis. The infrastructure was falling apart, but they could seem to find a couple of, few dollars to automate jet skis. So how the hell did you end up with a portfolio where your infrastructure, basic infrastructure, was unable to be completely maintained? And instead of directing your attention into that area, you've got an entire project, Internet of Things. You can't, your fundamental business is breaking, and then you pull it apart. And again, there's at the heart of it, there's the almighty Excel spreadsheet, wielding its strength and putting numbers where numbers are, and justifying pet projects, justifying bias, justifying bleeding spend. Now, if this is, whether it's a private business, whether it's a government organization, it's either taxpayer dollars that are going down the drain or shareholder dollars that are going down the drain. So that cheap little Excel spreadsheet that was free has now just cost you a couple of $1 million, or has lost you shareholder growth, or has lost you cash flow, and that's not a cheap Excel spreadsheet. It can seriously affect a company's position in the market. You look at where you end up, and my God, we've got some pretty expensive spreadsheets out there. Pretty expensive spreadsheet. And all I have to do is come back and you unpick it, and you're like, wow, we're fixing this governance. We're getting some proper tooling in. We're going and doing the planning again. Because when you did it the first time, you decided to save some money on that little spreadsheet.
And do you think it's all about saving money, right? Is that why people use a spreadsheet and jump in?
Oh, I think it's a number of things. I think it's my other gripe in a why don't we add it to the list, project management industry, is that we stop teaching people about the tool set. Like there is a reason, and I keep harping on about this lately, why a lot of, and I was trained a master scheduler back in the dawn of time. There's a reason why we're all tend to be in our 40s now, master schedulers. They stopped training on the tool set. They stopped teaching project management about how to actually use Microsoft Project or any of the project suite, P6, Clarity, you name it. So we transitioned out of what used to be a trade and moved it into a university degree, where we now just read methods and frameworks, which is like architectural drawings, but we can't build the thing, and we don't know how to use our tools. And so there's ignorance in there. There's people who truly think that's the answer. They're unaware of the tool set that is available. There's over 400 project management tools available at my last count when I did a search on Gartner. We've got options. We've got assessments people actually go out and say, but you ask the planning staff, or you go and have a talk to a lot of the project managers. They've come through a system now where they'll quote a method, they'll quote a framework, but they can't tell you the tools. So they're looking at the architectural drawings and saying, yeah, we can build this. I have no idea what we're going to use. Yeah. So we've got to fix that in our industry in itself. So that's one thing we've got to sort of get going. The only thing I can do to start evangelizing and saying, guys, you've got to get back on the tool set, you've got to actually learn to use it, is to put the word out there. The other one you see a lot of where they use Excel spreadsheets is risk management. And it's, without any understanding that you can move the entire, risk exposure can be completely, well, not completely, dramatically minimized if they actually turn around and start using dependency management tooling, which falls out of a lot of your project planning. So if you do that, your dependencies don't become risks and you don't get issues, or those ones in particular. But so why have we stopped using our skill set? Yep, I'd say there's ignorance, it's easy. A lot of times people think it's free. They don't understand about the impacts. So I think there's a multi-layered.
So one of the things that we hear on the prioritization side is very often, you know, it can even be driven by leadership, where they say, "Oh, just start with something simple," right? And you know, again, I get where you're coming from, right? Let's start with something simple, but let's not start with something simple that makes the problem worse.
Yeah.
Let's at least start with something simple that moves us forward, not backward. And you know, and I think that, you know, one of the big challenges, as you know, is that those spreadsheets are not free. They actually introduce cost, error, delay into everything you do. So they can actually make it worse.
Make it a lot worse.
And in part because people believe them, right? They believe it.
And then there's the talent of the tool, mate, of the tool that goes with the tool. So the other thing I'm finding, okay, it's the talent and the skill of the professional that wields the tool as well. So if you get to, but at that point, they've got to, they would be savvy enough to go and pick up the right tool. So there's part one problem fixed. I think if you've got someone who is deeply knowledgeable in what they were doing, they probably wouldn't reach for the spreadsheet in the first instance. If they are forced to, you can at least hope that that would be translated into something more mature when required. And certainly, because the other problem we face is the double whammy, which is when you've got the Excel spreadsheet and then, for example, you don't know how to build criteria. You actually don't know how to use it. When you get the double whammy, I'm picking that's a mess, because you've got to come back and actually say, well, the basis by which you've done your prioritization, for example, is not grounded in correct criterion. It's flawed. You know, maybe putting the line item in there that says, do you enjoy this, is probably not a great selection criteria. Yeah, so it can have even further layers after that actually compound the problem of the Excel spreadsheet approach. I wish I could get it. I mean, I suppose you can do a Google search on all the options that are out there, which may be a follow-up.
So why don't we go through kind of the tool set really briefly and sort of say, right, you know, spreadsheets are wrong. What should we be using? So prioritization, we should be using this thing called AHP, which is, you know, it's just been validated all over the place as being the best way to do prioritization. If you want it, come talk to me. Got the best stuff out there. It's really good. Blow my own trumpet. Why not? Prioritization is easy. Just ring Stuart and it'll be fine. So let's move on. So you go on, you've picked projects and you're starting to think about resources and scheduling.
Well, then it's the right tool for the right job. So higher on the capital end, you'd be looking at P6 Primavera Suites Clarity. If you're looking at IT transformational type work, where you want that little bit more flexibility to move into some of the other tool suites like Jira, Microsoft Suite does an absolutely fantastic job for that. There are other options. What was it? Planning Sheet, I think I've seen recently again, but it will depend on getting a solid, you know, well-versed project manager in who knows the full suite to size it, because you're not going to want a Primavera if you're doing a small 6-month project. It's just ridiculous. I mean, you're going to want something like that when you want to interface with SAP, because it's higher on your capital options. But while we're here, I do want to mention one thing. Schedules don't work like Excel spreadsheets. Now, that's the other thing that I'm finding a lot of. Excel spreadsheets, and the girl and anyone in my team who happen to dial into this and have a quick nosy, you'll have, I've got so many post-it notes around here, it's ridiculous. I went a bit crazy. I love stationery. So Excel has tabs on it, and everyone's really familiar without being able to flip between the tabs. So you can't see it because they're all pink. I should have got another color.
That's all right, we can see it. That's okay.
So the tabs you can flick with, and you see them sort of all at once, and everyone's very familiar with the layout, and you can move between them, and it's quite fluid. But it's in a sort of a 2D approach, and you can link between them, but it is very direct. Like you'll have to tell a particular tab to link to another particular tab. Now, for some silly reason, everyone picks up Microsoft Project or any of the projecting tools, and they just assume that it's going to work exactly the same way as an Excel spreadsheet does. It doesn't. In Microsoft Project or any of your project suites, that tooling you have, you tend to have one that's time, one that's resource, and one layer. Let's call them layers, not tabs, that are finance. And it works in a three-dimensional way. So you're looking at the front, but you change any one of those layers and the information will change. And it's got that intelligence in it that actually does all those calculations for you. It fundamentally works in a different way. And so you get a lot of people who pick up an Excel, Microsoft schedule, I'm just using that as an example, many of the scheduling tools, and treat it like an Excel spreadsheet. And that pull my hair out, because it's now you're holding the hammer with the wrong end and still trying to hit the nail. It's like, well, I'm glad you got the hammer. We got that far. But now let's use the tool correctly. And that actually let's start learning how to do it properly. For the life of me, I have not seen a proper scheduling course probably since about 2007 to 2010. I think it was about the last time I saw solid scheduling course. They could be out there. I've sort of haven't looked before I jumped on today. But no, when it comes to actually delivering our projects, then we should be utilizing those tools. And then once we deliver and we hand it over to operations, I mean, then you've got the iTools of the world. And actually going in, the likes of proper process, get the BAs in, and they have a completely different tool set to utilize for those operational parts of the business. But right tool for the right job. Don't stick a Band-Aid on a thinking gaping wound. It's not going to be helpful. And that just the awareness, I think the awareness that an Excel spreadsheet solution, we're picking on Excel spreadsheets, but quite frankly,
it could be PowerPoint, it could be
oh yeah, I've seen Visio, I've seen Microsoft schedules done in Visio, and they're like, oh yeah, but we see where we are. I'm like, oh geez. Because all it is perspective and perception. I walk into projects all the time, and the first thing I say is, are you filling in like a performer or a template for your reporting? Oh yeah. I said, well, then it's not real, because what you're doing is separating your management tool from what you're telling the rest of your communication tool. And in the middle of that is a brain, a human brain, and it's got bias and it's got emotion. It doesn't want to say the wrong thing. It wants to influence, red is bad. We're going to, all the things we know we shouldn't do, leach out, and you can't, unconscious bias, trying to, not tell a bad story because you really want to be, you want contracts extended, or you want, there could be a desire that you're trying to, all that comes in and you can't help it. You just can't help it. And it all gets typed up in a template, but it's not completely different. It will not be a clear, representation without that bias. So I always sit there and say the other reason we use the right tools is they interface with the right solutions. So if you're using Microsoft Schedule, if you're using a prioritization tool, you can link it into your reporting, and you will get a clear perspective of where you are in your status, where you are in your prioritization, what everything looks like, and then you apply a management overlay over the top. But you never mess up that data-driven decisions.
Yeah.
But use the tools to get the data.
One of the other things that's coming across to me, and I don't know if it's deliberate or not, is but you're actually talking about different tools for different parts of the process, right? Because Microsoft Schedule is not good at other things.
No.
If you use a PPM tool to manage your project delivery and progress reporting, that's not going to do anything for you in terms of your forward-looking risk management and things like that, right? And so lots of vendors, I think, try and present themselves as being the solution to everything. And in my experience,
we're all not that good.
Well, my experience, most of them do one or two things quite well,
Yeah.
and then the other things they do badly. But
Yes.
and people think, well, because it's all from one
No.
vendor, that's okay. And I would argue it's not okay.
No, it's not.
When it goes wrong, it tends to be quite a big problem, right? It tends to be quite
Yeah.
expensive.
It's like I'm very, very key out of the end of prioritization work. So if you're using transparent choice tool and you've come out and you've done your prioritization work, I want to grab hold of that, and I'd import that into a schedule viewpoint to continue a delivery discussion, and looking at, then start, but it's completely different. I wouldn't be using a Microsoft scheduling tool by which to analyze and prioritize the work. That's by the time it comes there, I want to know what those pieces of work are and then start applying constraint, which is what you want to do on Microsoft project. And I can see that you can tell my sun's setting. I just realized I'm sitting here, I'm going to be in the dark. So I'll set the light on. I just suddenly looked around. I'm thinking, oh, it's getting dark here. There, that's why you've got your coffee. It's nearly wine time for me. Yeah, that is no. I think we've got to look at the life cycle of not only a project, of an organization, and know where and when. So we were having a conversation today, and of course it came from my mouth, so it was completely wrong, but I just ran with it. I said, yeah, projects, I came out with projects are a bit like a parasite. What I was meaning was that they come onto the outside of a business, they'll inject a fundamental change, much like a virus, a fundamental change that happens to that business, and then they peel away and let that business grow. Projects shouldn't be hanging around ad nauseum. So when we do that, all that prioritization work, which should happen in the operational side of a business, we do want to take that, cling on the outside, make the changes we need to do, leave them with the operational tool set and peel away. But we peel away with the tools as well. You don't need them. You're not going to be continually, you don't want a project that's there for 40 years.
No.
Something's a bit wrong if you've done that.
Indeed. So I think we've kind of beaten up
Excel.
We've other spreadsheets are available. We'll beat them up as well. PowerPoint, Visio. So let's talk a little, just in the last minute or two, about cost, because going out, buying a PPM tool, that's expensive. Buying a prioritization tool is expensive. Getting specific resources who know how to schedule stuff. Oh my gosh! I mean,
oh, I get that one all the time.
Right? Come on, this is too much. It's expensive, right? And if you're a small organization, you might be right.
Yes,
that might be overkill for you.
I think it's size appropriate, it's complexity appropriate, it's business appropriate. There's so many feeders into making that decision. You're not going to use a really large cumbersome project tool on a 6-week project, and yeah, you may run a 6-week project off the back of an Excel spreadsheet. That might be the appropriate tool because you're only going to schedule review 6 times, but you're not going to use it for a $50 million SI implementation.
And that
would be horrific.
And there's a portfolio angle to that as well, which is that you might be doing a 6-week project, and a spreadsheet might be capable of doing it. But if you've got 100 6-week projects all going on at once, maybe that spreadsheet's not the right way to manage that, because it's going to be a disaster, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to see that. Oh no, we've got to write a book one day. Project management disasters.
I mean, that'd be great fun, wouldn't it? But you end up with these little islands of data in the spreadsheet that aren't joined up, and you can't do anything with them. And so you would imagine. So I asked 2 questions of almost every prospect that I talk to. Right. One question is, how many projects do you have? And the other question is, how much do you spend on projects? So be warned. If you talk to me, if you're inspired by this session and you ring Stuart, like I told you to do, you're going to get these 2 questions. And I would say in about 2/3 of cases, the answer is, to both of them, the answer is, don't know.
Don't know. Yeah, I was going to say they'll say they don't know. Yeah, because
Don't
they
know,
wouldn't.
don't know. And
Yeah.
it's because they've got
Well,
all this, they've
I
got all
had
this.
it today. I've got someone saying to me, "Oh, well, why would we need a master scheduler? You know, they're very expensive." And you feel like saying to them, "Well, if you don't, and your cost implication going out from that is that you will have the wrong projects at the wrong time that are mismanaged. You'll have extension as well than delay. Are you happy with that cost overhead?" It's a bit like the conversation I keep having with them about minimization of risk exposure. Because they say, "Oh, give us you love this one." I mean, I've told you this a million times. "Oh, we've got a really good risk management program process." I'm like, "That's really great." Now that means that you're managing in risk because you're waiting until it gets there, until you're actually going to do something. Now, if you're managing in risk, you automatically have management overhead, at least, at the very least. If not, increased resource utilization, there's cost because you've got something that needs addressing. You know, you're living on, rather than take the road most traveled, you want to drive on the cliff edge because why? For fun? Like, it's just, you know, let's maybe we should move into the actual lane and drive on that. I don't understand, and it's a similar thing.
Well, so there was one thing. So something you said there was really interesting, right? And I know I said the last thing was the last thing, but this is the last thing, maybe.
Right.
We always do this, right? You and me.
Yeah.
But so you said something there about, you know, master schedule is really expensive, and you know, but you shouldn't be managing risk, all this kind of stuff. So what I'm hearing in each one of these is that the tool is important, but you've got to be able to use the tool. So if you take someone and you put them out on a racing circuit in a road car and they keep crashing, right, because they're not a very good driver, there's no point giving them a racing car because they're just going to crash faster.
Yep.
Right. So there's something here about not just the tool, but actually saying, okay, guys, let's go and learn how to schedule. We don't necessarily need everybody to be master schedulers, but
No,
we do need you to not
at least
drive.
get your L's.
Yeah, at least get, so that you know where the big landmines are, and you don't do stupid things. You know, and in prioritization, we do this all the time. You know, actually, our customers, when they're deploying, they usually don't touch the software for 2 or 3 weeks.
I don't know. I don't know the last schedule I really looked at that had resources in it. It's all, everyone uses it for time. So, which is to me bizarre because you sit there, yes, it's 3 weeks long. I love your estimation, but how many people? Yeah, are you really, and sometimes, yeah, it's all hands on deck because someone misjudged what the time estimation was. Because they really haven't looked at how many resources it's going to use. And or actually, I love a fully constrained schedule. Schedule cracks me up. Like, they completely constrain it, and it's like, well, what's the bother? Why are you doing that? Because right then you'll go and use an Excel spreadsheet then, because you want to fully constrain the schedule. You're really not utilizing the tool for what it's there, which is to tell you about the tool will give you the information you need if you structure it properly, and actually if you use it properly, and then it will tell you when your dependencies aren't going to work. It'll tell you when your resources are running out. It provides you with that information. But going back to basics, work breakdown structures, people seem to not even understand how to do product or work breakdown structures anymore. It's just line items. So yeah, I'm horrified by the quality of our project management capability and skill that you come across at the moment in using these tools, which I suppose it might be biting us in the bum there, Stuart, because we're sort of saying we'll go and use an Excel spreadsheet anyway if you're that hopeless at it. But but it is a combination of knowing the right tool for the right job, and then being trained up, confident, and capable with that tool. And if you don't, ask someone, because there's a everybody's who knows how to do it is very willing. God, I would rather spend a week teaching someone, and at least I'm not going to get called in 2 years time because it's all gone wrong, and there's a phone call that's going to waste. I would rather everybody just have the skill set and share it amongst the community than have to go in and fix it, to be honest, because there's not many of us that'll it's qualified to sit there and fix them.
And that's the thing is, just, and I've said it 2 or 3 times already on this session, just be careful jumping onto Google or jumping onto YouTube, because there's a lot of really well-intentioned people out there. I'm not
Get on Facebook if you're going to do that. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
It's just as useful.
There's so many old wives' tales out there.
Oh yeah.
I almost did this session out in my garden, sitting under my favorite apple tree, so that I could tell you some old wives' tales about apple trees and how they're meant to store wisdom and do all these different things. And guess what? They don't. It was old wives' tales. And the internet is full of them. So we as I say, when we kick off a project with a customer, typically it's 2 or 3 weeks before they touch the software, because we spend a little bit of time, got a whole bunch of materials, and that we just train them.
But yeah, the other thing is, I think people need to seek out success. Like, it's no use looking on Google and coming up with some YouTube video by someone who had a bored moment, decided to espouse his greatness. You've got to go and talk to people who've got the war wounds, have got those bitter stories, but have also had those successes, learned from them, applied them, and say, well, teach me the shortcuts. Go and reach out for that wisdom, and learn from it. And say, well, shortcut my career by giving me the hints and tips that you've stumbled across over those hurdles, so I don't have to go and jump into those hurdles myself. I mean, it's so much easier to do that than watch people fall. But for us, when we're, especially in my world, where we're looking at larger programs. So I'll start looking at running programs for anything that's approximately around the 20 million mark. And we're looking at high impact, high cost, high risk, high complexity. And the reason I prefer to focus in that area is that's where I get the biggest bang for buck for being able to teach people how to fish. So I can come in there and actually say, don't go crazy and use the wrong prioritization tool. Please use an appropriate size tooling and method. Oh, don't even get me started on method application with tooling. Make sure they're married together so that we're having these cost savings, because in the end, it does hit the bottom line, and particularly in government, that hits our tax dollar. You want these programs and these people to actually deliver and have appropriately operating businesses in the end.
Yep.
Because it helps everybody, if you want to look at it in sort of a more Machiavellian way. But if we can get them running properly, I mean, I'm not going to lean into capital, because I like to focus at IT predominantly, although I have done a couple of capital. But we'll get roads working, you'll get hospitals up, you get IT functions for those hospitals working. That's what we want to do. And if they are in smaller projects and we're running smaller implementations, that's the learning ground for what will become those bigger PMs and portfolio analysts. And so if they are in those smaller areas, we want to start teaching them to do the right things and think about it before we start impacting.
So if someone wants your help, how do they find you?
LinkedIn or Google. I'm an absolute tart. I've got my number out everywhere.
I have heard that said.
Yeah, I don't hide. I'm at IBM. It's not difficult. It's just amanda.oakenfull@ibm.com, and I can take anyone's email. I would rather someone reach out, even if it's to connect them with someone in the industry that can help them. It doesn't always have to be me. I might not be the most talented. I mean, I've got 2 absolutely fabulous master schedulers that I work with. That again, they've got a network, and your prioritization works. You've got a fantastic network. I would rather link people together and try and get that help across. I mean, and I'll tell you, I forgot to tell you earlier, but I'm even catching up with Donna in the morning. So anyone who wants, she's just a genius in that whole PMO space and delivery space. So, we stay connected, but I would much prefer everybody to link in and have that help and uplift our community, so that we're using the right tools and step away from, put the Excel spreadsheet down and step away.
Excellent. Amanda, thank you very much. As ever, it's been fun, and hopefully given people a little bit of food for thought to, as you say, put the spreadsheet down and step away. Indeed. Thank you very much.
Yeah.